I want to spend some time giving you some good news. You want to hear some good news? All right. So as Christians in the West, and I'm assuming that most of the people watching this podcast tonight, we are Christians in Western countries, okay? And we are so used to being mocked and degraded and Christianity being put down that it's really easy for us to believe that Christianity is declining in the world and that things are just getting worse and worse in the world, and that it is so easy for us to believe that crime and godliness is increasing dramatically. In fact, I am constantly hearing Christians say things like this. Tell me if you have heard people say that. Tell me if you believe this yourself. I'm always hearing Christians say things like, well, things have never been this bad before. We've never seen such evil in our world before. The world has never been as evil as it is right now. Have you heard people say that? Do you think that? Do you think that? I especially hear things like that from people who believe the premillennialist way, that they think that there's going to be the Antichrist is going to rise and there's going to be this terrible tribulation and Satan's going to take over the whole world. And so people who believe that tend to be very, very negative and very pessimistic about our future. And now I don't believe that the Bible really teaches that way at all. And over the next couple of months, or the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be telling you why, and we're going to go through and do a lot of intensive Bible study over the next several weeks. So please stick with me. Please come back to do that with me. And we're going to see, just like we did with the rapture today, what does the Bible really, really say about our future? Okay, what does it really say about the end times? Okay, because in a lot of cases, what a lot of Christians have been taught, there's a lot of human opinion has been inserted into the mix, okay? And so we're going to learn together, we're going to explore together what the Bible actually says about the end time. So please come back for that starting next week. Okay, but the truth is that Christianity is not declining at all. Christianity is actually growing around the world. Did you know that? Christianity is actually increasing faster than the overall world population. Do you know what that means? That means that more people are getting saved and becoming Christians every single day than there are people being born every day. Isn't that amazing? That is incredible. Now, it's growing faster in the global south, okay, so like Africa, Asia, okay, and Christianity actually has been in decline in some Western countries like the United States, like Europe. Okay, so that's why a lot of people, in my country, the USA, a lot of us believe that Christianity is declining, okay, because it really had been. But you know what? That is changing. That is changing now. Have you heard about Gen Z? Gen Z, okay, these are people who are 13 to 28 years old. And all of these studies keep coming out more and more all the time that show that this generation of people, they are more Christian, yet they are getting turned on to Jesus in droves. Like, it is changing the demographics of the entire world right now. It's crazy. Okay. They are getting turned on to Jesus so fast that in these Western countries where Christianity had been declining, it is actually stabilizing and even reversing and starting to grow and increase for the very first time in, several decades. So wow, that is very exciting. Okay, and so there are lots of different studies. The study that I read, just in case you're interested, if you don't believe me, it is by the Barna Group, okay, if you want to try to Google that. But if you look this up online, I found a lot of different studies that are saying this, okay? So it seems to be, there's a consensus about it across the board. The Gen Z population is getting turned on to Jesus. So hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. I want to tell you about this, a couple of interesting things about this. Okay, there is a gender divide. Okay, a notable trend is that Gen Z men are much more likely to be followers of Jesus and attend church than Gen Z women. This is actually a big change over previous generations, because previous generations, it was more women who were interested in religious things. So that is a big change. The Barna Group study that I read said that the shift is happening as Gen Z reaches adulthood and shows increased interest in exploring faith and finding fulfillment, moving away from previous trends of increasing atheism and disillusionment. And I have a theory that it's the Charlie Kirk factor. I think that Charlie Kirk has already begun changing the world much more than most of us realize. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end of the podcast tonight. All right, so I want to read this article to you. If I can get it on the stage. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is from Frontier Partners International, and this article is from March 15th of last year, so it's pretty recent. All right. And so here's what they say. The Center for the Study of Global Christianity at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary recently reported that global Christianity is experiencing remarkable growth, defying expectations and surpassing population rates. What I just told you. Okay. Contrary to the anticipated slowdown, they thought it was going to get slower. The Christian population is projected to keep climbing. And like I just said, I think I forgot to tell you this. It is expected to surpass 3 billion by 2050. Okay. So within Christianity, this talks about certain denominations that are growing faster than the others. Okay. So we've got independents, Protestants, evangelicals, Pentecostals, charismatics. That's me, charismatics. The growth of Christianity is particularly pronounced in the global south. Okay, Africa, Asia. Africa in particular has undergone remarkable transformation, evolving from less than 10 million Christians at the turn of the 20th century to now being home to 734 million Christians. The growth rate is 2.64%. That's amazing. By 2050, Africa is going to have more Christians than Asia and Latin America combined. Come on, Asia and Latin America, catch up. Okay. Intriguingly, the report indicates that Christianity is not only growing in numbers, but also expanding geographically. And here's what they mean. In 1900, 95% of the world's Christians lived in predominantly Christian countries like the United States of America. However, the trend is shifting. And more Christians are residing in diverse non-Christian majority nations. And that's one reason why Christianity is growing. Because these Christians are going out and they're becoming neighbors of non-Christians. And they're spreading the gospel message. It's amazing. Simultaneously, atheism peaked in 1970, and it is declining. Agnostics are slowing down. They talk about establishment of churches is growing like crazy. Missionaries, more and more missionaries. The accessibility of the gospel is getting better. In 1900, over half the world lacked access to the gospel. There were several reasons for that. They either didn't have a Bible available in their language, or there weren't any missionaries or churches anywhere within access. But that decreased to only 27.8% in 2024, and it continues to decrease. Okay, and then the number of languages that at least the New Testament is being translated into continues to rise very, very quickly. So this is all amazing stuff, guys. This is good news. That is all really, really excellent news about Christianity, right? But what about the rest of the world? Because you probably hear people saying, maybe you even have thought it yourself, that, everything's getting so bad and crime is getting so terrible and evil is just worse than it's ever been. Is that really true? Are things really, really worse now than they have ever been? So I want to show you some charts and graphs because I love charts and graphs. Okay, so look at this one. All right, so this is the global homicide rate from 1990 to 2016. Well, yeah, looky there. Okay, if I had asked you before I showed you this chart, if I said from 1990 to 2016, what do you think the homicide rate, global homicide rate, do you think it went up or do you think it went down? Most people would probably say, I think it went up. I think it's getting worse and worse. Look how it just keeps going down, 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 down. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that. All right, look at this one. This is the battle death rate, okay, from 1945 to 2020. So what is that? So battle death trends is simply talking about people who die in some way. Their death is connected to war, okay? So soldiers, okay, or civilians who die because of war, okay? So when you see the very big spike there, like around 1945, that of course is World War II. But look, after that, it just keeps going down, 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 down. You got the Vietnam War, okay? But besides that, it's definitely going way, 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 way down. So, and this is really crazy. I don't think that people realize this because I don't hear people talking about it, but you know that war is basically becoming extremely rare, almost non-existent. In my lifetime, I'm 58 years old, there's no war. We live in a time of peace. We really do. Have you ever thought about that? No, because you don't hear about this stuff on the news. All you hear about is how terrible everything is. Okay? So war has become very, very rare, which is amazing. All right, and here's global genocide deaths. Of course, genocide is when, large groups of people are murdered. And so you can see that also is going down. That usually is connected to war. The big spike there at 1970, that's the killing fields of Cambodia. So anyway, but you can see it still is going down. All right. So all of that is just recent history. Okay, so from 1950, 1945 on. Okay, so pretty recent history. And you can see how just in that time period that everything is getting better. Okay, the homicide rates decreasing, all of these death rates, everything is decreasing. It just in these past, 70 years or so. But if you go back and you go back even further in time, okay, and look at a larger swath of time, the improvements in the world are even more dramatic. So let me show you this next one. Okay, so this is homicide rates in Europe, okay? But it goes all the way back to the 1200s, okay, the 1200s. So you can see there how it continues to go down, 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 down. Look at, oh my goodness, look how terrible things were in the 1400s. All right, so according to this, it's really hard to imagine just how violent the past was. So this chart shows that in the 13th and 14th centuries in Western Europe, the homicide rate, the murder rate was as high as 70 murders per 100,000 people. 70 murders per 100,000 people. That is incredibly high. Okay, today it's more like one homicide per 100,000 people in the same area. Okay, so it was incredibly, incredibly violent back then. And this is all from secular sources. Okay, so all of these charts and graphs that I've been showing you, these are all from secular sources. So even the secular sources have to admit when they look at the data that life is getting better. We have experienced decades and decades now of news that sensationalizes and highlights all the bad stuff. And it has really given us a unrealistic idea of what's really happening out there. It's made us feel like things really are getting worse and worse, but that is just not true. It's not true. Things really are getting better and better and better all the time. This is probably the best time in the whole history of humankind that we could be alive. And we need to recognize this, especially Christians. We need to know this. We need to be filled with the joy of the Lord and thankfulness and gratitude. Because you know what? Overall, the quality of life of humans has dramatically improved throughout history, especially in the last 1 century, within the last 100 years, within the last 50 years. This is the best time to be alive. Factors like health, nutrition, education, have dramatically improved. And the quality of life that we enjoy now, especially those of us in the West, even if you're considered a poor person in the West, it would have been unimaginably luxurious to most of human history. Do you know that? Do you know that? Because throughout most of history, humans have lived lives of subsistence. They've lived in squalor. Their lives were focused on survival. They usually worked sun up to sundown, okay, just to feed themselves. A drought would bring starvation, malnutrition. Poor harvests were a constant threat. Famines would be devastating. For example, the Great Famine in the 1300s killed 10% of Britain's population. Okay, childbirth was extremely dangerous for both the mother and the baby. Infant mortality rates have been terrible until just recent history, just the past 50 years. Did you know that? If you go to an old cemetery, you will find all of these little tombstones of little babies. And sometimes the mother will be right along next to them. Okay? We have seen so many improvements in our quality of life. Towns and cities used to be crowded and unsanitary with human waste thrown right into the streets. It was disgusting. There was widespread violence and plagues that would wipe out whole villages. Okay, like the Black Death in the mid-14th century. It killed between a third and half of Europe's population. We can't even fathom that. We cannot even fathom that. Can you imagine a plague, wiping out 50% of the people in the United States? We cannot understand how terrible life used to be. Clean water was scarce if it was available at all. Sources of water were often contaminated with human waste. Most people were illiterate and uneducated. The justice systems were harsh, and accused criminals were sometimes subjected to brutal torture. And that's what life was like for most of human history. For most of human history, hard, grueling labor every waking moment. Okay, no rest, no vacation, no fun, no entertainment, no clean water, no electricity, no luxuries or amenities of any kind. And look at this one. I got one more chart. Okay, so life expectancy. Life expectancy didn't rise up above 48 years old until the end of the 1900s. The end of the 1900s. That's, I was alive then. That's crazy. Okay. And look back to 1500, it didn't raise above 30 years old until the beginning of the 1900s. I mean, it's just crazy. Today in the United States, the average life expectancy is 78.4 years, almost 80 years old. That's how much better our lives are today. And so when I hear people complaining about how hard their lives are today, how terrible everything is, honestly, I usually don't say anything, but I usually just think, yeah, they just don't know. They don't know anything about history, because that's just not true. That's just not true. Most human beings who have ever lived in the history of all humankind would not even be able to fathom the luxury and the comfort that we enjoy today. So be aware of this. Christians especially, we need to be aware of this. We have so much to be thankful for. Be thankful. And so why am I telling you all this? Why am I telling you all this stuff? And the reason is because so many Christians are so negative, really, really negative. And they believe this lie that things are just getting worse and worse and worse. And it makes them have a very pessimistic view of life, okay? Especially the people who are, just waiting for the Antichrist and the tribulation and all this stuff, which I do not believe is exactly what the Bible is teaching us. So if you think I'm crazy, come back next week, because we're going to start looking into what the Bible says about that. So I believe the negativity and the pessimism, especially for Christians, it's a lie of the enemy. It is a lie of the devil, because the devil wants us to be pessimistic and negative. He wants us to believe that things are getting worse and worse and worse. He wants us to feel hopeless. He wants to steal our joy. Don't let him do that. Don't believe it, because it's just not true. It's not true. Life is getting so much better. We have so much to be thankful for.